Hi, this is Kelly Tolman, and welcome to Literature Discussions. This time I'm going to talk about some of the ideas that we find in Chapter 10 of Lord of the Flies. Chapter 10 begins with Ralph and Piggy reflecting on the events of the night before, trying to decide if Simon's death was murder or not. The moral question that Ralph and Piggy are forced to confront is one that continues to be with all societies today. Death is a natural extension of the human condition, and throughout history, societies have either intentionally or unintentionally killed people. This can occur in the more obvious ways, such as the death penalty or warfare, but also in more subtle and intricate ways, such as the manipulation of safety protocols for consumer devices like cars and other machinery. Each society has to confront death and decide how to label it, justify it, and create some way of dealing with it. Here, Ralph and Piggy attempt to sidestep the question by suggesting that they didn't participate. They didn't do the killing, so it is a problem for the other tribe to deal with. In many ways, Ralph and Piggy take the approach that most societies have chosen to take throughout history. Rather than accepting their own actions or admitting their own part in a tragedy, they displace those actions and emotions onto another outside group. This is a powerful and very common response because it is one way of identifying yourself as civilized and avoiding the blame that comes with savagery. Now that Jack has solidified his place as chief of his new tribe of savages, Chapter 10 gives us a better look at his leadership style. Whereas Ralph tried to operate at least somewhat democratically and had an easygoing, friendly approach, we see that Jack is ruthless and authoritarian. He immediately sets up guards to watch over the fort and prepares traps against invasion. In addition, Robert describes how Jack is, quote, going to beat Wilfred, end quote. No reason is given for the punishment, but it is apparent that Wilfred has been tied up for hours. This leadership style is very different from Ralph's, but clearly it is more effective in many ways. Their camp is organized and much more safe, and as the later raid on Ralph and Piggy shows, Jack is able to carry out effective plans. At first glance, the general reaction I get from most of my students is that they would prefer Ralph's leadership to Jack's leadership because of the element of fear and cruelty that Jack has. But if that is the case, then why do the boys stay with him? Clearly, Jack, as just one boy, cannot possibly hurt everyone, so why do the others help him and follow him? This brings up one of the more difficult questions that the author struggles with in this book, and that is the question of what type of society people actually prefer. Nearly everyone I have talked to says that they prefer a society filled with freedom and personal liberty. In addition, yet nearly everyone also prefers a society that is orderly, safe, and which provides all of the comforts of life. Unfortunately, some of these objectives run counter to each other, and some of them are at odds with what psychologists are finding out about human nature. Freedom, by its very nature, is uncomfortable because in a free society, other people have rights too, and sometimes they use those rights against you. Earlier in the book, we explored the example of order. The boys agreed on rules for running their meetings, but those rules were opposed to the personal freedoms of each boy to speak his mind when he wanted. In many ways, this is a reflection of the arguments for censorship and freedom of the press. Jack wanted his personal freedom to speak, but when he used that freedom, he used it to suppress the speech of others, stating that not everyone should be able to speak in meetings. Then, when he gained power, he went on to further suppress personal rights, but by doing so, he was able to create a more organized tribe and to better provide for his tribe members. While on one hand, they suffer from Jack's cruelty, on the other hand, they now have better shelter, better food, and better safety. Another possible reason the boys stay with Jack is because many of them are now also in positions of power. One of the side effects of democratic leadership is that sometimes nobody has any real power, or power is so widely distributed that it takes forever to get things done, and people feel like they don't have real power. In authoritarian regimes, however, people can and do have real power. Jack now has power of life and death, and by extension, so do his cronies. This power lust can be addictive. As the saying goes, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. People like Roger are getting a taste of that power, and it is enticing. I should probably also point out that if you were to ask these boys if they were more free under Ralph or Jack, many of the boys would express that now they have more freedom. Wilfred might not, but certainly Roger and Robert would. This is one of the contradictions of authoritarian regimes. For many people, the very fact that they don't have to worry about the rights of others can feel like freedom, because unless you are being actively oppressed, you actually enjoy a better degree of life. The other part of this chapter shows the development, or lack of development, of Ralph's group. He, Piggy, and Sam and Eric are unable to effectively regroup. Ralph's single-minded obsession with lighting a signal fire blinds him to the true situation that is developing. He has a real enemy and a real threat, but all he and Piggy can work on is making a meager fire. So, what makes Ralph so ineffective? He isn't lazy, and he isn't stupid, so what is it? But beyond that, why is it that so many of us would choose, or at least say that we would choose, to live with Ralph? Clearly, he isn't getting much done, and he hasn't throughout the story, but he is at least kind. Under his leadership, at least you know that you aren't going to get tied up and beaten, even if you don't have a place to live or anything to eat. What do you think the implications are for society that the author is exploring here? Of course, no discussion of Chapter 10 would be complete without talking about Jack's raid to steal Piggy's glasses. Of course, this is the defining moment, the clash between tribes, and Jack's tribe comes off perfectly. Nobody is really hurt, and they get the glasses without trouble. Ralph, on the other hand, is injured, and he mistakenly fights with Eric. The result is that Ralph's group is left weaker than they were before, but at least they are in good spirits. The one character who is now in dire straits is Piggy, who is nearly blind without his glasses. Thank you for tuning in to Literature Discussions with Kelly Tolman, and be sure to check out all of my video and audio content at literaturediscussions.com. Thanks, and good reading.